The events I'm about to describe happened about 6 years ago now, and they still haunt me every day. I'd been dating Claudia, my then girlfriend, for about 3 months at the time. Way back before I'd met her, she'd inherited a house from her grandparents in a very secluded, wooded area in Oregon, close to Grants Pass. At the time, I was based in Washington, Quincy, so it was a long trip. Because of this, we usually visited each other over weekends or time off. This particular time, I had a work trip near her place, so we agreed I'd stay overnight and then leave early for the work meeting in the morning. The day started fine. Claudia was excited to have me over. I called her that morning to confirm, and she promised to wait up. Traffic turned out worse than usual, and I passed a strange accident on the highway that had traffic backed up. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but in hindsight, maybe there was more to it. The car involved in the accident looked like it had been scratched up by an animal. It slowed me down, and I ended up driving at night with only the trees and a nearly empty road for miles. Claudia and I stayed in touch on the phone throughout the drive. At some point around midnight, her tone changed. She said she heard something outside, someone singing a weird off-tune song. I wrote it off as maybe a trick of the wind or some local wandering around and tried my best to get her to do the same. But she sounded scared, and honestly, I didn't blame her. It was late December and cold as hell outside. Plus, as I mentioned, Claudia's late grandparents lived in a pretty secluded spot. A little bit later, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, she was still clearly worried but had calmed down a lot. Then she gasped, swearing she saw something pale, almost human-shaped, moving oddly among the trees. I tried to calm her down again, but I was genuinely freaking out too at this point, although I tried to hide it. The next thing I knew, I heard a loud banging through the phone speaker, like someone slamming on her front door. Claudia screamed. I told her to make sure all the doors and windows were locked and call the police. I nearly pulled over to call the police myself, but thought better of it. About half an hour later, I finally got a text back from Claudia. False alarm, raccoon trying to get in. It felt off though, as she hadn't used any emojis, and no little X for a kiss. Really unusual for her. The text didn't explain the singing or what I heard, but I was tired and just wanted to get there safely. I texted back asking for more details, but she insisted she was tired and told me to just let myself into the guest room so I wouldn't wake her up. Again, this was not like her at all. We always shared a bed when we stayed over with each other, and she normally loved to greet me at the door, but it was getting late and I convinced myself she was just tired. However, I did try calling her shortly after and the line was dead, like she'd switched off her phone. I reached her place at around 2 a.m. The house was dark, no porch light, no glow from any window. I thought Claudia would definitely be in bed by now, but she usually left a light on for me, and the porch light had a motion sensor, so must have been dead. Nonetheless, I managed to find the key under the flower pot and went in. The place felt colder than normal, like the heating hadn't been on for hours and none of the light switches worked. I won't lie, I felt like something was horribly wrong at that moment, but I think I just wanted to believe that everything was okay. I was tired, and all the stress of those scary phone calls and the drive just made me, for some reason, ignore my gut feeling. So I figured the power was out, and I was too tired to investigate, so I went straight to the guest room. I dropped off to sleep almost the moment my head hit the pillow, but sometime in the early morning, I half woke to the sound of creaking floorboards. I was sure I could hear footsteps moving in the hallway and pausing by my door. I held my breath, thinking it had to be Claudia. I swear I heard the handle jiggle once, then nothing. To this day, it almost feels like a bad dream, and I pretty much fell back asleep immediately after the creaking stopped. When I woke up, sunlight was trickling in, and it was still cold in the house. I walked over to my shoes and noticed something on the rug. Dried mud. My footprints led back toward the front door. This was strange though, because I'm positive I didn't walk through any mud. It's a gravel path up to the house that leads onto wooden decking. But then I saw it, and my stomach flipped. There was a muddy smear near the entryway, and deep scratches all around the front door, as if someone or something had tried to pry it open, or keep it closed. Worse, there was a second set of footprints in what looked like dried mud, mixed with what at the time I was convinced was blood. They weren't shaped like any animal I recognized, but not exactly human either. They led deeper into the house, and upstairs to Claudia's room. I didn't know if I should run or hide or what to do, to be honest, but I managed to psych myself up to calling out for Claudia. No response. Then I heard it, a faint noise upstairs, a low, eerie melody that sounded out of place in a quiet house. I recognized the tune from what Claudia had described the night before on the phone, and I freaked out, and I panicked. I grabbed my car keys and ran out of the house, and drove away as fast as I could. I stopped a mile down the road to call the police. I explained what I'd seen and heard, and pretty soon 2 responding officers arrived and checked the house, but they found no trace of Claudia. They did say there was blood and more scratches upstairs, specifically on her bedroom door, and footprints and signs of a struggle. They said, judging by the prints in the hall, it might have been an animal attack, and maybe she'd run off into the woods in a panic. But nothing about that explained the strange singing or her final text. Claudia's been missing ever since. The police listed her as a missing person, and I tried hiring private investigators and organizing searches with her distant relatives. No one ever found a clue. 6 years later, there's still nothing. Her phone never turned up, and she's never made contact. Part of me wonders if she was taken by someone or something in those woods. I've thought about what would have happened if I'd called the police earlier, or if I hadn't brushed off her fears. But at this point, there's no closure, just the knowledge that she's gone, and I have no idea why or how. I still can't explain the footprints or that strange melody I heard echoing from upstairs. Whatever happened that night, it made me realize how quickly everything can go wrong, especially in a place so isolated. I only hope that wherever Claudia is, she isn't suffering or didn't suffer, and I try not to think about what might have been waiting for me if I'd stayed even a minute longer.